For today's video, I'm gonna show you how to install in your games FSR 3.1.4 if you're using an older generation card, or FSR 4.0.2. Yes, you can use these new versions right now, and you don't need the Adrenaline app, and you can use FSR 4 in all games right now that support FSR 3.1, like this easy. Wait, so you're telling me that I can use FSR 4 in games that don't support FSR 4 officially, and the Adrenaline software doesn't support them as well? That's exactly what I'm saying. And in case you're new to the channel, this is Ancient Gameplays. I'm Fabio Pisco.
Who? GVG Mo!
Bringing you lots of software deals like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2019 or 2021 with a new Windows 11 design. And for all of these, you can use my SKG discount code for 30% off, getting a Windows 11 serial key for $22 and a Windows 10 one for only $15. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. Some weeks ago, AMD released the Fidelity FX SDK 2.0, and one of the biggest things that the SDK brought was that we finally had DLLs for FSR 4. Because previously the only thing that we had was injecting FSR through the drivers or through the file that was in the system through the drivers. So we really needed the AMD Adrenaline app in order to upgrade to FSR 4, or in case of course you're using Linux, you can go because you have the modded Mesa drivers and so on, but on Windows you absolutely needed the AMD Adrenaline app in order to use FSR 4, but not anymore. And speaking of Linux, I made a very good video a couple of days ago testing Windows 11 versus 3 different Linux versions or Linux distros. So if you didn't get a notification, just lay an eye on it because YouTube's algorithm has been changing again and again and the views are quite messed up. I mean, it's YouTube, whatever. So as for today's video and installing FSR 3.1.5 or FSR 4.0.2, that also works with Optiscaler, but we'll get there. All you need to do is go to the GPU open page of FSR Fidelity FX SDK 2.0, then you go download, and as soon as you download it, you can download, for example, to the desktop, and you'll have this zip file, Fidelity FX SDK version 2.0.0. You open it, then you go to Kit, Fidelity FX, bin, and then you have these 3 DLL files, AMD Fidelity FX Upscaler, AMD Fidelity FX Loader, and AMD Fidelity FX Frame Generation. And you copy these to the desktop, and now you have these 3 files. And in case you don't know, before these 3 files or before the Fidelity FX, the newest Fidelity FX SDK 2.0, AMD had just one DLL file for both the Upscaler and Frame Generation. And while this might seem a good idea, it actually isn't, especially if AMD wants to keep using FSR 3.1 for the older cards and FSR 4 for the newer ones. And that's exactly why we have the loader, the Fidelity FX loader. The loader DLL will basically see if your card supports FSR 4 or not, and if your card does not support FSR 4, it will deliver you FSR 3.1.5. And if your card does support FSR 4, it will deliver FSR 4.0.2 or the version available at the time. How to install it? Well, if we go to Marvel Spider-Man 2, you can see that it supports FSR 4 through the Adrenaline app, but if you don't really have the Adrenaline app, it doesn't. If you go to the game, even though I have a 9070 XT, I open Marvel Spider-Man 2, I go to the settings, and it shows FSR 3.1.3, sorry, and we have IGTI and we have XeSS and nothing more. But as soon as I go to the software and I enable FSR 4, as simple as it can be, I open the settings and as you can see, FSR 4.0.1. But again, you need the AMD Adrenaline software. So if you're not using AMD Adrenaline software because it's giving you some issues, it is simple. Go to the games folder. I believe mine is on this disk. In this case, the main folder is the folder that has the FSR DLL. So all you need to do is go dll.old in order to keep the older file in case you have some issues. As for the loader, you need to rename the loader to Fidelity FX DX12. So get rid of the loader part and then copy these 3 files inside the game. You copy them to the same folder where we had the Fidelity FX before, as you can see. And now as soon as we go to run Marvel Spider-Man 2, you go to the settings and you have FSR 4.0.2. And if we go to the Marvel Spider-Man inside the AMD software, as you can see, FSR 4 is not enabled because it is enabled through the DLLs. So 1440p ultra-wide, FSR 4.0.2 quality mode. It's working. It just works. It isn't perfect, and I believe that AMD will improve it even more, especially now with FSR Redstone. Sorry for the stuttering. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is, looks quite good, and the frame generation works as well. If you want to go into the frame generation option, frame generation, bam, accept, you're now working with frame generation, also smooth, no issues whatsoever. And in case your GPU does not support FSR 4, at least yet, we're waiting for the new Int 8 version for the older GPUs of FSR 4, of course, the Int 8. Now we're using FP8 on the RX 9000 series, but if your GPU doesn't support FSR 4, it should appear here 3.1.5 instead of 4.0.2, okay? Instead of the usual 3.1.3, it would appear 3.1.5. If your GPU supports FSR 4, it will appear 4.0.2. Simple. And the same thing happens with the alters. If you go into the game, 1440p ultra-wide, you can see FSR 3 quality, and we don't really have the option to use FSR 4. And we don't really have the option to use FSR 4 because we didn't enable it on the AMD software. And again, you need to do it. AMD needs to whitelist the game first, so it needs a driver update in order to whitelist FSR 4 in order for you to use FSR 4 inside the game. Which is kind of a bummer because even though FSR 3.1 is available, we needed to wait AMD to list or to whitelist FSR 4. Again, even though the game supports FSR 3.1, you can't really update to FSR 4. You need to wait for AMD to do it.
I'm tired, boss.
Then we go to the alters, binaries, Win64, and as you see, AMD Fidelity FX DX12, this is the file and the folder. You go dll.old, bam, and then you copy these three files to the game's folder. As you can see, done. Remember, the game showed FSR 3. And now, when running the 9070 XT with a 25.8.1, you go down and you see FSR 4, even though it isn't enabled on the Adrenaline app. It is just here. FSR 4, it is working. And actually, in terms of shimmering in this game, the FSR 4.0.2 works a bit better. In terms, for example, where it says Captain's Cabin, it has a little less shimmer around those translucent pixels, and the same happens to kind of the structure in the back of the character. It just has less shimmer. And in terms of performance, I mean FPS, it is basically the same. So yeah, they improved it a bit. It isn't a huge improvement, but it is definitely improved. And now you don't need the Adrenaline app for anything. It just works. As you see, FSR 4 working quite well. Clarity, no motion blur. Yeah. Now imagine that you have a game that supports FSR 3.1, but the Adrenaline software isn't actually whitelisted to support FSR 4, meaning that even though the game supports FSR 3.1, you cannot use FSR 4 in that game. One of the examples is, let's say, Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy supports FSR 3.1, but you can't use FSR 4. And the same happens with Titan Quest 2 that has been recently released. Titan Quest 2 also doesn't support FSR 4, even though it has FSR 3.1, so you can upgrade it to FSR 4. But AMD didn't whitelist the application to be able to use FSR 4, so you can't really do it. But now you can. For example, in the game we have the upscaling options, and it shows FSR 3 with quality mode, which shows 1.5 times. Whatever, we don't really have the balance mode here, I don't really know why, but we now have FSR frame generation and anti-lag 2 as well. We can disable frame generation and anti-lag 2. Let's get it enabled, and immediately as you look into the water you can see a lot of pixelation. I don't really know if you can see this on video. I can perfectly see this on the computer, but for example here on the leaves that are passing by we have lots of ghosting. As you can see, ghosting here, ghosting there. Even here it looks quite bad with pixelation. Ghosting just doesn't look good. It's just not the pixelation but the ghosting, the lack of detail in most scenarios. It is just there. And now what you can do is just quit the game again and go to the folder where Titan Quest 2 is installed. In this case, Game, Steam Apps Common in my F disk. Titan Quest 2, binaries, Win64, and here we have the file AMD Fidelity FX underscore the X12, again the X12 AMD Fidelity FX library, and we go dll.old, and then we go and we copy these 3 files to the games folder, and in terms of frame generation, which version do we have? Yes, 3.1.5. And as soon as we're back into the game, we still have this pixelation. I don't really know why, I mean, that's maybe a game's issue, but in terms of ghosting and so on, we have much less. We still have some artifacts here and there, but again, the game is still in beta and still has some issues. But in terms of the clarity, for example, looking at this boat or looking at the structures here, I can see that the picture is much clearer, and of course, we have much less ghosting here. It's still present, but it is there. And even though that you're using FSR 4, if the game does not support the option to show the FSR version, it will still show FSR 3. Even though that you're using FSR 4, it will still show FSR 3. The same thing works with Optiscaler. For example, if you're looking at the gameplay, you can see that FSR 4 delivers very nice quality. Some texture popping, but yeah, you can see clear images. Even when moving, you don't have that motion blur artifacts, or if you're looking around the character, you don't have those translucent pixels that FSR 3 delivers. So the quality is there, and we're definitely using FSR 4, definitely. As I told you, the quality is there, but it doesn't show FSR 4. If you go to the menu, it will still show FSR 3 because, again, the game isn't prepared to show different versions of FSR or the DLSS. So it will show FSR 3, but you're in fact using FSR 4, which is great. But what if the game doesn't really support FSR 3.1? Well, in that case you can use Optiscaler, and this also works with Optiscaler. Now, I'm playing RoboCop Rogue City right now, and it doesn't really support FSR 3.1, so I can't do that DLL swap, but I can use Optiscaler. And as you can see, I'm using Optiscaler using FSR 4.0.1 with Optiscaler with XeSS frame generation, and then we have 3.1.4, and this is with RoboCop Rogue City. Works fine. Now let's go to the games folder, possibly here. Yeah, RoboCop Rogue City. Then engine, binaries, oh, this is not a folder, game, binaries, Win64, and here it is, the folder. And this folder is most likely from Optiscaler, since this game doesn't really support FSR 3.1, so this is the folder that Optiscaler uses. So you can just go here, again, dll.old, do the same process as you did before, copy these 3 files to the games folder, and then let's run it. And it shows FSR 4.0.2 or 3.1.5, which are the upscalers that are included in that same file. And maybe if we go to the AMD frame generation, it will also use FSR 3.1.5. It is what it is, as you can see, working 4.0.2 wherever you want to use it. It just works. Although I must say that in some games FSR 4.0.2 might actually have more shimmering than FSR 4.0.1, and RoboCop is one of those. If you look at the ground, for example, you can see that we have some shimmering, more than we did with FSR 4.0.1. But again, FSR 4.0.2 might need some new motion vectors or something like that aren't presented here, and that's why the quality gets a bit decreased, especially when moving. But yeah, in some case scenarios it will be considerably better, and you won't really need to do everything that you need to do with the Adrenaline app. You just go, swap the DLL, especially in single player games where you don't have the risk to be banned, and it just works, and yeah, much better than having all that trouble. Oh, this looks like crap. This doesn't happen with FSR 4.0.1, by the way. Maybe Optiscaler just isn't ready to work properly with 4.0.2, and the issue is with Optiscaler instead of the upscaler per se. Because Spider-Man and Titan Quest worked fine. Jesus Christ. Anyways. And well, that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Leave your comment in the comment section if you have any doubts. Just leave them there. I'll As usual, I'll answer as soon as possible. But anyways, you can now install FSR 4.0.2 or FSR 3.1.5 in your system without, and especially FSR 4, without the need of any adrenaline app, without the need of any injection. You just go there, swap the DLL files, and FSR 4.0.2 will be there, available for you to use, even if the game isn't whitelisted by AMD, like Hogwarts Legacy, like Titan Quest, like many other games that aren't. You just go there, swap DLLs, and you're now using FSR 4. Thank you very much for watching the video, hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comment in the comment section once again and like the video because that really helps the algorithm, and see you in the next one. Cheers.